My son could describe his pain score, his stool frequency, his fatigue level, but when I asked him how he was feeling, he'd stare at me blankly. And that's not avoidance. That's a documented pattern in Crohn's patients that nobody's talking about. Hi, I'm Kate, and today we're talking about alexithymia, the clinical difficulty identifying and naming your own emotions, and why it matters so much for people living with Crohn's disease. If I think about my son's blank stare moment, this specific conversation, it made me notice this just wasn't teenage deflection. It was like I was asking him about a hard calculus question, and he really hates math. My husband post-surgery also had trouble explaining his feelings, I guess, for want of a better word. He could say, pain is here, but not how that felt. And we have noticed it in clinic as well. Patients who are articulate about labs, but they're silent about what's happening inside. And they're not imagining it. Alexithymia isn't a personality flaw, and it isn't stubbornness. Research published in journals including inflammatory bowel disease has found alexithymia rates, they're significantly elevated in people with IBD compared to the general population. Some studies placing it at 2 to 3 times higher. Again, you Crohn's guys are so lucky. The gut-brain axis gives us a biological reason. When the gut is in chronic distress, the nervous system is so occupied processing physical threat signals that the part of the brain responsible for emotional labeling, the interoceptive pathways, they can become genuinely dysregulated. The body knows something is wrong long before the mind has words for it, and it's not weakness, it's neuroscience. So what I do in clinic, body first, words second. Start with physical sensation as the entry point to emotion, located in the body before trying to name it as a feeling. My son could point to chest tightness before he could say anxious, and that's what that looked like for us. I also have a laminated list of emotion words that I have in clinic. I don't ask people to read them out. I ask them to point at it because recognition is easier than generation of words for alexithymic brains. The laminated sheet, I use it in appointments, and it just makes people feel much more comfortable. The other thing I do is I shrink the question. I don't say how you're feeling because that's such a big question. I ask smaller, more answerable questions that don't require emotional vocabulary to respond to it. So the 3 smaller questions I ask is, what's better today than it was yesterday? Or what do you need help with right now? There's a big difference in what I get back. The other thing I do is I track patterns, not moments. Because alexithymia makes real-time emotional awareness hard. Retrospective pattern spotting across days or weeks is often more accessible, and it's definitely more honest. My husband has a weekly check-in habit that emerged after his 3rd surgery. What we tracked was symptoms, pain, sleep, etc. Not really how he was feeling, but we could see a pattern if anxiety was creeping in more. Naming this pattern to your gastroenterologist changes the clinical relationship because it explains why symptom reporting feels incomplete and opens the door to better support. And that's what I coach people to say. So my son now is much better. I'm not saying he's fixed, but his emotional literacy looks like a teenager in deep remission, not just a teenager who is deflecting. And my husband's 20-year flare-free picture, the role that learning to name things eventually played, it helped him achieve stability. This shift in clinic when I see a patient first recognize this pattern in themselves is quite remarkable. If you've ever been told you seem disconnected from your feelings, or if you're the carer watching someone struggle to answer that question, share this video with them. Because we support people with Crohn's, and knowing this changes the support we can give them because the gut and brain connection is so strong. I'll see you in the next video. and have a beautiful day.